Hello and welcome to Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem, and I'm your host for this program, which is designed to give all of us a little more insight in the doings and goings-on around our capital. Our guests today are a couple of special people who have special concerns about our pets and our animals in the community and how we humans interact with them. Our guests are Gerri Thompson, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the Humane Society of the Willamette Valley, and Don Myers, who is the Executive Director of the Humane Society of the Willamette Valley. Welcome to Capital Insight.
Thank you, Kevin.
I think everybody can tell who Gerri Thompson is and who Don Myers are. Gerri, tell us a little bit about your background. We always like some information about individuals and where they come from and that sort of thing to give us a little perspective. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I've raised in Salem, lived here all my life, worked for many years, 25 years, for a major health insurance company, recently retired. Also spent about 5 years in state government as chief of staff to one of our governors.
You're allowed to mention his name, George Vicatia, excuse me.
Vicatia.
Not George Bush either, sorry. But Vicatia, and you were chief of staff for 5 years?
Uh-huh, that's correct.
And following that, now you still do some lobbying work, don't you?
Yes, I retired, just a little more than a year ago. I returned to the health insurance industry after I left Vic, after Vic left office. And then I retired just a year ago and went into some private consulting and lobbying business.
So how do you come to the Board of Directors of the Humane Society?
Because Don Myers twisted my arm.
And how long have you been on the board?
Not quite a year.
Now you're also chair of one of the committees, the Government Affairs Committee?
Correct.
What kind of activity would that committee carry on?
Well, what we're doing right now, we're embarking upon planning our activities for the next legislative session. Of course, our interests lie in laws that govern animals and the caring of animals. Hopefully, we'll be very active in this next session trying to improve upon those laws and bring about some of our own goals.
All right. Well, Don, you've been on our show before, but for the benefit of folks who've missed that program, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born and raised in Northern California. I've lived in Oregon since 1977, so I consider myself an Oregonian.
Yes, all is forgiven. You are now an adopted son.
That's right. I have the moss on my back to prove it. I've been with the Humane Society for almost 4 years. It's an excellent organization. Prior to working with this fine group, I was an executive director with the March of Dimes, and my last position with the March of Dimes was in Austin, Texas, and I had 6 offices in Central Texas that I managed for them.
Well, you know, folks think of the Humane Society, and I wonder if these citizen on the street would say, well, isn't that just the shelter where you go to pick up a kitten or a puppy? And can you give us some idea of the scope of the operations of the Humane Society?
Well, we're one of the larger nonprofits in our area. We have 23 paid professional staff. We're open 7 days a week, like you mentioned, to shelter animals. We're there for any type of animal, mainly companion animals, dogs and cats. And last year we received more than 11,000 animals at our shelter. We also have a cruelty investigation program. We have 2 full-time cruelty investigators that work in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department and municipal police departments.
Well, let me ask about that for a moment.
Okay.
I don't want to cut off the other things, but on the cruelty investigation, if I understand it from what I've read in the papers, you've worked out, in effect, an arrangement with county government and the Sheriff's Department on how you carry this out. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, we get a lot of calls on animal abuse and animal neglect at our shelter, and then the Sheriff's Department receives some also, and everything's referred to our cruelty investigators. We go out and do the legwork, if you will, and investigate the situation. And our main goal is to educate people, you know, and give them information. We give out thousands of pounds of dog food and dog houses and such. But there are situations where we just, the abuse is so rampant and there's such a bad problem that with the Sheriff's Department and the DA's office, they prosecute.
Now, you've mentioned the shelter activities. I'm aware, of course, just from interaction with the Humane Society on the education effort. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We have the strongest humane education program in the state. We have 2 full-time humane educators. One educator works with the primary grades in the Marion and Polk County areas, and then our other educator works with middle school and high school students and also with young adults. We talk about responsible pet ownership, spaying and neutering of pets, safety with animals, and then in the higher grades we talk about the correlation between animal abuse and child abuse, the environment, and some media issues.
Now, Gerri, as a member of the Board of Directors, can you give us some idea how the board works to oversee the activities of the Humane Society?
We act a lot like any typical board does, more of a policy-setting board than we are involved in the day-to-day activities. For example, currently underway is finding a way to give the employees of the Humane Society a better working environment as far as it relates to fringe benefits. They're very dedicated staff. They work hard. As Don said, they're open 7 days a week. A lot of stress involved, believe it or not, in taking care of those unwanted animals that land there. We're working, obviously, with local and state government, trying to figure out better ways to interface with other regulatory bodies. Obviously, we oversee the building project and any other policy issues that Don brings to us. We're very fortunate to have Don, let me tell you.
Well, you're different in the sense that, I mean, some communities there may be what people think of as the pound, which may be a government
That's right.
operation. The Humane Society is really a nonprofit corporation that depends on a variety of income sources, I assume. Would either of you care to talk about the income sources for operations and how you handle that?
That's my reason for living. We have a diverse revenue sources. We have an auxiliary, and we have a thrift store downtown Salem, which generates about $70,000 a year. We have a very strong working relationship with Marion County. We have a contract with them. We do not receive United Way money, money from the federal or the state government. So we do a lot of fundraising. We do a lot of direct mail, special events such as golf tournaments. We have a telemarketing campaign.
I got to interrupt you again. You say, I want to hear this again. We do not receive any money from the federal government or the state government.
Or the United Way.
Or the United Way.
Right.
And yet you manage to carry on these extensive programs.
Our operating budget's $750,000 a year.
Now, you must have a pretty strong membership base.
We have wonderful people in the Willamette Valley that support us, and they have for years. We were incorporated in 1965, so over the years we've made many friends, and we have 17,000 people that give us money on a regular basis.
Well, Gerri, you're probably a reflection of what I'll call the community connection in that sense, because here you are, a well-established, well-respected member of the community, and you've been convinced to get on the board. Is that one way that connections are maintained with the community, by having board members who come in from all walks of life in our community? Can you give us some idea of the diversity that you have on the board?
Oh, sure. We have insurance executives, we've got real estate people, we've got housewives, help me, Don, we've got
attorneys,
CPAs.
State employees.
Mm-hmm.
Just cover the whole range for the community then.
That's right.
Nearly every walk of life is represented, and Don's basis for contributions come from nearly every walk of life as well.
Now, there is a big project, and we really need to talk about it early in the program, relatively early, because I want to make sure we talk about the fundraising for the new development, the building project. And Don, why don't I ask you to tell us a little bit about that?
We've been in the same physical plant for 24 years, and we've estimated 350,000 animals have come through our front doors. That's a lot of wear and tear, and a lot of people that have come through our doors. So our building is worn out. It's too small. It's about 8,000 square feet. And our board of directors is preparing for the 21st century. And to better serve the animals and serve the public, we need a new shelter. So we have been working for the last year and a half with Karkin, Arbuckle, and Kostick, a wonderful architecture firm in Salem. We went through 13 drafts of our blueprint and finally found one that we really like. And we will begin construction of a 20,000 square foot brand new animal resource center this summer.
Well, the folks will have a chance to see a drawing of this resource center on the screen. And you said you're going to start construction this summer?
That's correct.
Now, you're still raising some money for it too, though, aren't you?
Yes, and we could use some more help. So anyone that's listening, you can come by the Humane Society and bring us a donation, or if you want to call me at 585-5900, I'd be happy to send you some more information.
Well, let's pause there for a moment again and say the number is 585-5900.
Correct.
And if people forget the number, they can look in the book under the Humane Society of the Willamette Valley and call Don Myers and say, send me information on how I can help protect animals in my community by contributing to the new center.
That's right.
All right, go ahead. I interrupted you. You were talking about the fundraising that's going on right now.
Right. The building will cost approximately $1.6 million. We have $1.1 million in the hopper. So I'd like to thank everyone that has been so generous, but there's a lot of room for more donations. One special way that people have been donating are buying bricks similar to Pioneer Square. The bricks are $50, and they can honor a parent or a loved one or their pet and put their name on a brick, and it will be at our shelter in the plaza area in front of the building for the next 35 years.
Well, that's interesting because we have bricks at the State Fair. There's a plaza at the State Fair, and our family purchased one. I mean, you have to go find it.
That's right.
And Pioneer Square in Portland has it, and you're doing the same thing at $50 a brick.
That's right. We've sold more than 500 of them so far.
Well, that's a nice way to feel like you're getting something for your money.
Or we could have the Kevin Mannix adoption dog wing, and it's only $100,000. So.
Do you allow continuing political ads in your bricks? I'm probably good for 35 more years in politics.
There you go.
Well, so that's a big part of it, is you're getting pure contributions, and folks who want can pay $50 towards the bricks. You're $500,000 to go on the goal, but you figured that the way things are going, you had enough to get rolling for this summer.
We sure hope so. It's a 10-month construction period. We'll start this summer, and we should be in our new home March of 1995, and we will continue the capital campaign. Ken Sherman Jr. is the chair of the campaign, and we've been doing very well. And Elliott Sheets Construction has been hired to be the general contractor, and they'll do a fine job for us. And our board is very excited. And being a nonprofit organization, we're providing almost the infrastructure for the city of Salem by having an animal shelter there that are to serve animals and the public can be proud of. And we'll be in business in this building for at least 35 to 40 years.
Where will it be located?
4246 Turner Road. We own that 9 acres free and clear. And we'll be just to the south of our current facility. So we'll stay in business, and then after the new shelter is construction, or the new construction is completed, we will raise or tear down the old building. And of course recycle most of it.
Very good. I'm going to pause for a moment and mention to our audience that you're with us on Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem, and I'm your host for the program. We have two guests today talking about the Humane Society of the Willamette Valley and their programs, and especially their building project which is going on. We've got Gerri Thompson. She's a member of the Board of Directors of the Humane Society, and Don Myers, who is the Executive Director for the Humane Society. If at any time you have any questions or concerns about what transpires with this program, feel free to contact me at Capital Insight, H395, State Capitol, Salem, Oregon, 97310. And we'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns. We were just talking about the building development project and the exciting prospects for new construction, but the Humane Society is not just the building, not just the animals in the shelter, not even just the folks who are involved directly. It seems to me from watching your programs over the years that there's a lot of community involvement and social policy development about how we deal with our animals. Would either of you care to talk about that maybe from the government affairs perspective? I mean, I know I worked closely with the Humane Society on the pet theft legislation. We needed that kind of support. Which one of you would like to grab on that one? Gerri?
Let me start and then I'll let Don finish. He's a good cleanup man. I think there are a lot of relationships between humans and animals. I think animals certainly serve us well. I'm sure you're very familiar with the programs where they have animals taken into senior citizen centers, help the senior citizens, nursing homes, those kinds of things. But there's the other side of it too, and that's families who think they want an animal. Christmas time, they get an animal for a gift. Within a few short weeks, they realize they don't want the animal anymore. They don't know what to do with the animal. They end up taking them to the Humane Society. Thank goodness we have a Humane Society. Thank goodness that we have someone there that cares, takes care of those animals, and tries to get them adopted. Obviously, there are some animals that are not adopted, and again, we have the Humane Society that handles that for us. Saves the taxpayers many dollars, in my view. If we did not have the Humane Society, where would these animals go? Obviously, we'd have to look to county government or city government, and there go our tax dollars again.
Well, you raised an interesting point, if we can pause for a moment, and that is, we hear a lot of folks talking about privatization of government operations. Here we have something in our community where privatization has occurred in the first place. That is, we have a nonprofit, private corporation running our own Humane Society program, which includes the whole shelter program, the spay and neuter program. So it's pre-packaged for us. We don't have to convert it. All we need to do is adopt it ourselves and provide some support for it through our voluntary contributions. And I think that's a compelling point that you've made there.
That's right.
Well, I interrupted you a bit.
That's all right. That's all right. That's fine. We are also very interested in this spay-neuter issue. We are hopeful that we can encourage all facilities like the Humane Society here in the Willamette Valley to encourage spaying or neutering of animals that are adopted. Obviously, this is our way of trying to reach to that uncontrolled pet population that causes the need for the Humane Society like we have here in the Willamette Valley. That's going to be one of our issues that we're going to work very hard on.
Don, did you want to pick up a bit on the issues and how there may be some legislative direction or direction at the county level?
Well, there's a lot of opportunities to improve the state of animals in our community. Spaying and neutering, of course, is a huge issue with us. We euthanize about 70% of the animals that come into our shelter, and it's a horrible thing that we have to kill surplus animals, unwanted and unloved animals, because we can't find homes for them.
And I need to pause and ask you to point out it's because you can't afford to house them over time either, isn't it?
We own 9 acres, and if we had 9 acres full of kennels, they would be full all the time. We need people to be responsible and to alter their pets. One piece of legislation that we were unsuccessful in getting passed last year, and we will go back again in this session, is to require all animal shelters, municipal and county facilities across the state to collect a deposit when they adopt out animals from the shelter. We've been doing it for years, and we have about a 98% compliance rate on spaying and neutering of animals, the 2,000 animals that go out of our shelter adopted every year. But some humane societies across the state and some releasing agencies will not do that. So Gerri's committee is drafting some legislation that we would hope that would pass this year, and that would require these organizations to get a deposit, and that's the motivator for people to get their animals altered. We also launch a spay-neuter campaign every year. We know it's a multifaceted approach with education and with the encouragement of people through our newsletter and PR campaigns. And also you need some legislation in there to really make the program work.
I'm going to just throw out a question that's off the top of my head. And I get dangerous when I do this, so watch out. But have we ever thought about a taxation scheme, and I'm making this up as I go along, so bear with me, where we say that if you want to have a non-spayed or neutered animal, that you have to have it licensed and pay a small tax for that. But if it's spayed or neutered, you don't have to have it licensed and you don't have to pay a tax. Now, that's sort of a reverse incentive program, and I'm not aware of any community in Oregon that does that. Or is it done anywhere? And again, I didn't mention this before we started the show or anything. I'm just throwing it out. These crazy ideas come to my mind.
There's a lot of ways of approaching a spay-neuter incentive. Of course, in Marion County now, there's a differential on dog licenses. It's cheaper if you have your dog license. So over a 10-year period, you'll save a lot of money, more than what...
Okay, so for dog licenses in Marion County, they already have that kind of incentive.
That's right. We're seeing the amount of dogs in our shelter going down, but we're seeing the amount of cats rise because there's no licensing for cats. The ownership of cats is really up in the air. If somebody has a cat that's an outdoor cat and they feed it once a week or a couple times a week, it's quote-unquote their cat. Well, this cat is going out and getting pregnant or impregnating other cats, and we get box after box after box of unwanted kittens all summer long. And because people aren't responsible and they don't have their cats altered, and there's no financial incentive. So we know the financial incentive works, and we could use some work in cat licensing and encouraging cat owners to have their animals altered.
Now, as we talk about the legislative themes, we worked together on the legislation last time to provide this deposit program, and sometimes you do have to go back to the well a second time to retrieve the water, and we'll be doing that.
Sure.
Will there be some changes that you're going to be proposing in this? Last time we tried to make it a pretty balanced program to make it attractive to everybody. Have you had some ideas about how you want to change the program?
We're working on that right now, Kevin. Dawn has put together an outstanding government relations committee that I'm working with, and we're reviewing what we did the last session, seeing where we can improve, what we can do better. And in fact, we just had a meeting this last week, and the process that's underway right now is to take a look at that legislation, see what we want to do with it, and what changes we might want to make. So it's a little early to answer your question directly,
Sure.
But give us another week or two and we'll have that answer.
I'm sure I'll be hearing from you anyway.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we see in the legislative process is it's amazing. Is folks think, well, you file a bill and it gets heard by a committee and then it gets moved or doesn't get moved, but it's really a much more complicated process because it deals with what party's in power of the House or the Senate, and then is the sponsor of the bill with the party in power or not, who's the chair of the committee, what committee does the bill go to, what time of day is it? Did the chair have a good morning or a bad morning? And we've seen some of those, and I'm not going to pick on any given personalities, but we've seen personalities at work in this process. I guess it takes some time, and you've had the experience with this, Gerri, to figure out, it's like getting through the wilderness. There's several routes you can take, and sometimes you have to make some detours to get through. My observation would be that perseverance is probably the most important factor in getting legislation through, assuming you have a good idea in the first place.
Sure.
Good ideas don't necessarily go through overnight, and unless it's some spectacular big issue that everyone's up in arms about, it takes a lot of background work. And you've had experience with that as a lobbyist, so I would think that that would help us with the legislative moves.
Hope so. Hope it helps. I also have to keep reminding all of us that it's a step at a time, too. I think we also have to learn how to utilize our huge constituency out there. Sometimes we forget how large that constituency is.
That's a great point. I have to say, it's called the pet theft bill, but it really wasn't. It was much more than that. It was people misrepresenting to folks that they wanted to adopt. They read an ad in the paper, they come by, they say they want to adopt your pet, you're moving to California or something, you have to leave your dog behind or whatever. They would misrepresent themselves, and then they would turn around and sell those animals to animal research brokers who would then resell them to labs. The legitimate labs didn't want to have anything to do with this kind of improper activity, but we had no laws against it. And we didn't have enforcement laws in the criminal code for people actually stealing a pet. It's of such little real value that it was hard to peg a value on. Let's face it, most of these are not pedigreed dogs.
Right.
And so we put together legislation, and some legislators thought it was kind of cute or funny, and they would come up with these cute phrases. But then we got animal owners and animal lovers to start contacting legislators and coming back and saying, you think it's funny, I'll tell you how I feel if my pet is taken from me, and how important the relationship was. It's amazing how the politicians changed their tune, and it was no longer a laughing matter after they heard from those constituents.
Well, I think one of the problems, Kevin, is that with all of the issues facing the legislature, whether it's budget, revenue, whatever it is, it's very difficult to take the seriousness of the animal situation. I mean, it's very low on the priority poll, as you are well aware, in comparison to everything else. And what we have to do is raise that priority. We have to raise that priority, make people understand that this is just an important link to those budget issues as a lot of other items are.
Well, I'm developing a bit of a reputation for always handling some sort of an animal bill each session. This last session, we also managed to do the assistance animal protection legislation, where, say, a seeing eye dog may be attacked by somebody, and it wasn't considered very serious because it was just an attack on an animal. Of course, in and of itself, an attack on an animal is inappropriate, but it was particularly devastating in terms of the expense of training. I won't give you the speech on it, but we managed to get that legislation through. And I was amazed at how important it was to the disabled community.
That's right.
To see that some people could pay attention and care. And then you learn about there are also hearing dogs. And there are dogs who are assistance animals who can help people just bring things to folks who are physically disabled.
That's right.
I was amazed at the education we were able to provide to legislators about the number of things that special animals, assistance animals, do to help people.
Many of our animals from our shelter go down to Dogs for the Deaf, and they're trained to help people.
I should add quickly, too, that there's also search and rescue animals that are protected now by that act. So you're germinating some new ideas for further progress next session.
That's right. We're working hard at it. You'll hear a lot from us.
Well, one of the things that folks in our audience can remember, too, is that we need to make sure we have legislators who are sensitive to not just the big stuff, but all that little stuff that helps sort of hold the fabric of our society together.
Well, it's like you so often hear that we have a tendency to treat the symptom, or treat the disease, not the symptom. Don mentioned earlier that there is now a proven correlation between child abuse, animal abuse, adult abuse for that matter. The Humane Society handled a very tragic case with a cat. I'm sure you read about it. Those things are very tragic, but they also, I think, are indicators of bigger problems that we, the taxpayers, are going to have to take care of. I mean, we've got people that are disturbed and act out on animals, hopefully not children, but we know they do. So when we have animal abuse cases, I think that's something that we need to look into even farther.
So you're seeing this as a signal that, for instance, in an animal abuse situation, one of the things we have to look at is who else is in that household, because there may be children being
That's right.
abused.
Exactly.
Or if it's children who are doing the abuse, let's see how they've been abused, and what is the potential in the future that they may be harming humans.
Absolutely.
So that there's this broader and broader relationship that we can start to evaluate. So animal abuse is unfortunately almost an indicator of social stress and disorder.
I'm afraid it is.
Do you have any kind of interactive relationship with the juvenile authorities when these kinds of cases come up? Can you talk about that?
We do. We have very strong entree to really all of the different judicial avenues here in our area. We work a lot with the District Attorney's Office. Dale Penn is a wonderful help. We went to the court session with the two young ladies that lit Jeffrey the cat on fire, and it was sobering experience, I should say. It was tragic. The young ladies were filled with remorse. It was a horrible thing. And you know, what the Humane Society promotes, the warm, fuzzy feeling of the human-animal bond, but there's a lot of unfortunate animals out there that don't receive the respect and the care that they should, and the Humane Society is for those people, and we take these cases very, very seriously. We have an excellent relationship with the Marion Polk Veterinary Association, and they provide thousands and thousands of dollars of free veterinary care in these types of situations for us to help the animals. And I guess on the positive spin on this, we also have an excellent relationship with Homer Kearns and all of the teachers in 24J. We'll reach more than 15,000 students this year in the Marion Polk area. We know that we're doing a great job with the kids because their parents are in the shelter that weekend adopting pets. We get tons and tons of thank you letters from them and posters. We have a summer camp for kids, and they come out to our shelter. We have promising veterinarians go through the camp every year. And kids do care, and kids need to hear that humane message because they're better classmates, they're better members of their family, and ultimately they're better citizens from hearing our message.
Well, part of your message has been don't litter, spay and neuter your pets, which I think was a very compelling way of bringing around, of course, Oregon's tendency to want to keep our communities clean, but there's another type of uncleanliness in the sense of unwanted animals being left in the community and then not cared for. Have you had much success in terms of getting the media to cooperate and spreading that message, or do you have to pay for the, I see some of those billboards, do you have to pay for those, or how does that work?
Accurately Communication donates that space to us, and the Statesman Journal also sponsors our spay-neuter campaign with Marion Polk Veterinary Association, and they're very generous by providing space for us and getting the message out. It's hard to measure the impact, but we get a lot of phone calls, and again, it's one of the facets that, that the Humane Society uses to encourage people to value animals and to do the right thing.
As we wind up with only a couple of minutes left, I'd like you to think about this and perhaps remark on it. Isn't it nice to have an entity in our community that isn't asking for tax dollars, is asking for voluntary contributions, is performing a very important function, is not complaining about Measure 5, although I have my own complaints about it, but I'm just trying to put this in perspective. You're trying to face the challenge of the future with the building campaign. You're more than 2/3 of the way there. You're looking for more community support. You're working with kids, with educators. How does it look for you for the next few years? And Gerri, I'll ask you to comment for the Humane Society.
Well, I think with Dawn's leadership, it looks very promising. Dawn has done a tremendous amount for the Humane Society here in the Willamette Valley. Education is obviously a very big part of the role. Contributions are even a bigger part of the role. And I have to just tell you that I'm very excited about it. That's why I'm part of them now. I, like you, like what they're doing. I appreciate what they're doing, and it's my turn now to get back to them.
Don, I'm not going to let you say anything because I'm getting the signal that we have to wrap it up. And actually, I shouldn't let you say anything because such nice things were just said about you.
I'll pay her that $50 later.
I really appreciate you both joining us on Capital Insight. And thank you, members of the audience, for joining us on Capital Insight. We hope to see you again soon. Thanks again.